I guess that's the way I like it. That makes me rumble. Don't we rumble? Float like a butterfly and sting like a bee. Ah, rumble, young man, rumble. Hey! That's what we're going to do. We're going to rumble.
This week on Fight Stuff. Sorry, sir, we're all out of Ruth. I guess you could call my store Ruthless. A lady cashier defends her patrons. I'm Askren. You for the first time. We talk UFC 235, and we get philosophical. What else is new? Reminiscing on the life and times of Mirko Cro Cop. This one has no sound, so here we go. Some kind of a convenience store. You see a guy getting smashed. He looks pretty drunk, smashing another guy into a drink container, a glass front, and the clerk, comes out, and she starts attacking the guy. Words are exchanged.
Wow.
Good night.
Wow. This clip is rather incredible because it seems like two drunk guys. Nice find, by the way.
Thank you. Well, let me tell you how I found. Well, I did just see this one because things come across my radar. But this is one actually that Allie sent me.
Really?
Of all things, yeah. I think she's trying to be supportive.
That is the sweetest thing I've ever heard.
Because she definitely doesn't give a fuck about fighting, and she probably thinks this whole thing is horrible.
Yeah.
But
it could probably contribute to the downfall of society.
Yeah.
But hey, I saw this clip that you might like.
So this clip is it's a surveillance video clip, so there's no audio on it, which is going to happen sometimes. So we won't get the fun, oh shit, like some videos. You just have to deal with our oh shits. But welcome to the Fight Stuff podcast. We always kick off with a little breakdown of a viral video. And this clip, we're in a convenience store, looks like of some kind, or maybe like a kiosk in a Subway or something like that, sort of convenience store setup.
Yeah, it definitely looks kind of foreign, though, too, as I'm looking at some of those labels. So you have, like, next to any kiosk or sort of like bodega, you have a bunch of, like, glass, basically beverage dispensers.
Yeah, it's like
it's
like those fridges with the glass front doors that we're all used to.
So I mean, obviously we got some Heineken, we got what I can only
hey,
guess
they're not paying for ads. Get out of here.
Oh, I mean, some unnamed beer company next to another unnamed beer company.
So this one guy in the back there's like a line of people and a woman cashier at the front of the line, and in the back of the line, this one guy must be really drunk or something like that. He looks visibly like floppy, fallen over drunk, and he bounces into this guy. The other guy, I guess, doesn't like the guy making contact with them. He might be a little drunk too, who knows, decides to use this as an opportunity to beat up the original drunk guy. And he does it by just grabbing the guy by the collar and smashing and bouncing his head and his body.
Yeah, he's bashing his head against what we can only assume is a glass door of this refrigerator before what looks like all of 120 pounds soaking wet female store clerk goes in and regulates.
She has had enough, and she goes to the back of the line.
And the line is, all of four people deep, but she's like, wait a second, I've had enough of this. This is unacceptable. And
she opens with bop. She gets her distance with her left hand, turns her body away to cock the right, cracks him with the right, and follows up with what looks like a kick to the groin, just a typical kick right up the center. The guy is taken aback. They exchange a few more words, and she gets her distance to the left hand again, and then bop right on the button with the right hand.
Overhand right, drops him
hard.
Casually walks back to her post and we can only assume would be ringing up the remaining patrons in the store. What's funny is guy number 2 in line, his attempt to break up the fight is like, hey guys, he touches them on the shoulder, being like, no, enough. And she's just like, get out of the way, dude. Let me show you how it's done.
And the drunk guy who was originally getting beat up, really, he comes up and he shakes her hand. He's like, thank you.
Thank you for saving my life.
Yeah. This is an impressive video. And I think there's just some amazing technique displayed here. The left hand measure to get your right hand. I always think of that. Your left hand is a little bit like paint the target, especially in like clinchy sort of situations. You can use that left hand to stall in advance or to keep space, or you kind of hike your shoulder up as you're doing it to keep your face covered and your center line covered. And then you can just run that right hand bomb down the center. You paint the target with the left and you drop that J-Dam with the right.
I mean, there's two ways. Like, whenever I see a former boxer do that, sort of like square up and sort of line up, I'm like, oh no, this person knows what they're doing. They're like, I'm getting distance right now, but look out for that haymaker coming over the top.
Their feet get a little squared with that diagonal box they've created, which is why boxing is called box. They blade their shoulders a little bit, and that left hand, that left hand really works the jab that pops is obviously really useful, especially in a sport fight where you're going the distance and you need that thing. But in fighty fights, where the distance between clinching and striking, it gets messy real quick.
Right.
That left hand works really nice as a stalling device, a defensive device. It's almost like a Thai boxing
I use
move.
it as a distraction. So in my first career as a mixed martial artist, meaning Tong Soo Do at age 6, they used to teach us back knuckle, reverse punch.
Oh, that Bruce Lee, bop, that little...
Yeah. Because you're not going to hit anybody with that. But you follow up that, what they used to call a reverse punch, or like, basically your 2.
Yeah.
Like a quarter second before that. So it's like they don't even see the 2 coming because they're still focused on this little, like...
That rabbit punchy, flicky...
Right.
Yeah.
And I used to think it was so silly. And then all of a sudden it worked in real life.
Yeah,
well,
it's good. That's what that there's different ways you can throw your lead hand, your jab. You can do a flicking sort of jab that is used to mostly get a response, put something in their eyes that creates a distraction down the center line and starts to take up space and mess with their timing. And if you bop them on the nose or something like that, it is distracting, makes you blink a little. Or you can throw it really hard. In this case, we're seeing something that's not even either of those. It's even further to the side of distraction placement. You just measuring your distance. You'll see people do it on heavy bags sometimes too. It's a good thing to practice.
Yeah.
This tap with your left that you land that right. But this is quite remarkable and really speaks to what you can do in terms of size disadvantage, power disadvantage. If you know what you're doing, if you know how to dominate your center line, you know how to throw hard shots, you can really defend yourself. You
Absolutely.
can really create some damage.
She throws that kick like a Muay Thai kick. She throws it with intent. It doesn't really connect, but you know what?
Well, we watch it again because this boss, it's like a very boss Rutan. I thought it was more Muay Thai too, but look, it goes right up the center. It's very boss Rutan, just a kick right to the groin, very self-defense style. Boop, boop, bop. There it goes.
Yeah. Okay.
And that definitely, I don't think it was super square or anything like that, which
but
I
it wasn't
also think is good to note as... A kick in the groin sucks. No one's ever going to like a kick in the groin, but it is not necessarily the instant fight ender.
It's not the be-all and end-all that it's been advertised at.
Exactly.
Especially if somebody has an adrenaline rush or an adrenaline dump going. Like, you know, it's not the instant. It's not the touch of death that, like, many people.
The touch of death is one where you it's that shutting off the brainstem, which comes from creating a little bit of trauma, a little bit of whiplash in your neck, in your jaw, that kind of area that turns you off. That if you really, want to get good, you should learn how to just throw a good hard 2.
Yeah.
Or
an elbow.
Or an elbow. Elbows are definitely like the king of the first thing people should learn who don't know anything. Because they're easy to throw. Everyone can create force. They'll cut anybody. Anyway, this is an inspiring little... It's got 2.69 million views on this Twitter clip I found from a really appropriately named FFS OMG vids. For fuck's sake, oh my God videos, which is the accurate reaction to this kind of thing.
Still, I think the caption / title of this video, I hate violence, and yet I find myself head over heels in love with this girl, heart emoji, really speaks to me.
Very much speaks to me, very much sums up this, I thought, rather delightful viral clip of the week. What did you think of it, Zeke?
No, I loved it. Thank you for sharing this with us. By the way, welcome to the Fight Stuff podcast. I'm Zeke Rodrigues Thomas, and with me as always...
It's me, Jared Sleeper.
Shall we roll into the show?
Yeah, let's get into sports, dude.
Let's do it.
This past weekend was UFC 235. Which we have to talk about.
We have to talk about because it just happened.
It just happened when it's a Fight Sport podcast. The main event was Jon Jones again. We don't do full breakdowns of this stuff. There's a million other podcasts you can find that. We're interested in our point of view. It's like
right, and they do
highlights.
the breakdowns a lot better than we will. We have the time or the interest in doing. We'll just say, great, Jon Jones was fed another person in the light heavyweight division.
Yeah, I'm saying this again. He's not a slouch. Anthony Smith is no slouch, but I don't know. Jon Jones is just Jon Jones.
Yeah. He's cleaned out the light heavyweight division, I'd probably say 2 times over.
Yeah. Does it bother you, the steroid stuff?
Yeah.
It does?
It does, because he doesn't need, he's he's so good, yet he really loves coke and steroids.
I know.
And that's just really disappointing, because he would be arguably the greatest mixed martial artist of all time, which I could still make a case for that he is.
I think he is.
But you have all these asterisks next to his name or like clouds surrounding like his domination. Like, dude doesn't need to do steroids, doesn't need to do any PEDs, and still has, dominated everybody. I mean, you could say he doesn't need to do coke, but drug addicts do what drug addicts do, man. Like,
I think that is his story. That is the part that's the tragic thing about Jon Jones, is just someone who's so blessed and just can't stop getting popped. It's so bizarre. Yeah. Well, so whatever. I think like that's very obvious. So that was the Jon Jones Smith fight. Fine. What else? I thought that Johnny Walker knee, I think that's an absolutely hilarious, and that is 10 times more interesting to me and this podcast, is a guy who wins with a flying knee in 36 seconds, which is beautifully timed. I mean, and it's set up so well.
He does it set up so well, where he's just like, hey, I'm going to throw this. I'm going to throw this.
Well, I think that's a great clip for anybody who's interested in how flying knees work, to watch how to set that up, because you can see him drawing the line as you watch as he fakes and throws, and his opponent kind of keeps slipping right to where the knee's going to go. And so he knows he's going to slip to that side. He knows he's going to go right where he wants to put that big, long flying knee, and then pop, there it is. So seeing that kind of like little fakes, see what he's going to do. Oh, he's going to do the same thing I want him to. He's going to do that. I can hit this knee, and then goes for it.
Right.
Really cool. I haven't seen that clean, but fucking hilarious to right away arrogantly do, I'm going to do a drop into a worm.
And what happens?
He says that he separated his shoulder.
Oh, I didn't know it was that bad.
Yeah,
they were really casual about it, being like, oh, he may have injured his left arm during his celebration.
Well, yeah, I guess in the post fight he said that, like, he separated his shoulder, which is hilarious, and you deserve it.
Oh, by the way, that's happened in professional sports so many times. Guys who have hit the game-winning home run come around, they hit home base while they're celebrating with their teammates, tear their ACL.
Yeah, that's so real. That's just so real. That's
Kickers do that in the NFL and college sports all the time, where they hit the game-winning kick and then it's like, oh God.
Yeah, you know what? It's in working out, when you train people or like learn how to do like kettlebells is where I see it the most.
Yeah.
You'll learn how to brace your stomach and your back and hinge from your hips and pick everything up correctly, keep your shoulders back and down, everything's strong, and you do everything perfectly. You pick it up, you do all your swings perfectly, and then at the last rep, you're like, okay, done, and you collapse and you just curl and drop in because you're tired. It's the dismount is always where people get fucked up, you know?
Oh, yeah. No, I did that today at the gym.
Did you?
Not a kettlebell work. No, I'm not fucked up, but
Okay.
like it was like perfect form throughout the workout, and then as I was re-racking weights, I'm just like rounding my back and like twisting and doing all this dumb stuff.
One of the worst back injuries I ever felt was like cleaning up after a circuit workout, picking up a 20-pound dumbbell to put it back. You just bend over weird, and it's never that. That's always like, it is the straw that broke the camel's back. An injury like that is hundreds of micro injuries that lead up to this final little strain. But anyway, so that was fun. And then for me, the most interesting thing that happened was Askren Lawler.
I would agree. I would second that. My phone, I was not able to watch the fights live this week. My wife and I had an event, but everyone that knows that I'm into fight sports had put me on a thread or was like texting me about this fight, being like, dude, did you see this? Did you see this? And I finally saw it later on that night, but now I understand what everybody was talking about. And like, my wife was just like, what is going on? I was just like, it's a fight. Like, don't worry about it.
Ben Askren is someone that anybody who knows about fighting, he's so fucking good at wrestling. And
wrestling for MMA. Let's clarify, just because there's a slight difference.
Sure.
You know? But he's so dominant.
Like he's so dominant, and he hasn't been in the UFC. People have been saying, people who know, got to get this guy in the UFC. You can't talk about, and he's welterweight too, so he's fighting at that like weight class that a lot of the best people in the world are fighting at right now, like that up to 170 weight class. Which means he could make a cut to fight Khabib too, which would be exciting.
Yeah, he could. He didn't look like beef jerky at the weigh-in, man. He looked kind of smooth.
Well, and that's what's fun about him too, I think, is he's got that Midwestern wrestler thing. He's one of those guys who just almost doesn't look like he doesn't work out that much. He
has my body type.
Yeah, it's crazy. And is an incredibly dominant wrestler.
Right, and especially in ONE FC, where he was just plowing through people, and you're just like, okay, maybe the competition there isn't nearly as world-class. And once, as part of that weird trade for Demetrius Johnson that happened, he came over to the UFC, and anybody who knows was really excited that he was finally going to get a shot and show him what was up.
So they put him against Robbie Lawler for his first UFC fight, which is not a can. Like, Robbie Lawler's fucking good. He's been around a long time, so people aren't as excited about him these days. And he's been on a lot of highlight reels on both sides of the highlight reel.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, like, if you see that UFC glove that's on my desk right there,
yeah,
guess who it's signed by?
No.
Ruthless Robbie Lawler.
Wow, that's awesome.
No, I love this. I love Robbie Lawler.
Yeah.
Like,
so how did you feel about so what happened, for people who didn't see it and don't know, is two just fucking wacky things happened. Two predominantly things. First of all, the fight ended in the first round, which is dope. It just means it was a scrap. Ben Askren comes out. They get into an immediate tangle. Like,
he immediately shoots for the double leg.
Yeah,
which is exactly what he should do against Robbie Lawler.
Yeah, and he's doing some really high level grappling. You're seeing that far side hook that everybody loves now, that Henzo's been teaching a lot and using, and blah blah blah, body locking. And in this weird scramble where Askren seems like he's got a Kimura grip, if I remember correctly, and doesn't want to let go of this Kimura grip, Lawler does. It basically looks like a wacky kind of a fireman's carry, and just slams him.
If you look at it, it looks like Ben Askren landed on his head at like
turns him upside down, like a 10 and 2.
Yeah, it looks so terrible. Where you're like, if you watch it in slow motion, you're like, oh my god, I think that. Like,
and he gets stunned. Also, Lawler manages to turn that basically chicken wing that he was in, this Kimura. If you hang on to that and can reverse the situation, he gets him in this horrible position that some of you may have been in if you've grappled before, where your hand is stuck behind your back, but you're on the ground, which is a really uncomfortable position that makes it easier for your guy to pass to, or if you can strike, makes it real easy to land big shots, and just starts hammering him.
Lawler does not disappoint. He starts ground and pounding him with giant shots.
Yeah,
a couple of them land really flush,
for sure.
too.
There was a minute where you're like, ooh, Askren might be out. This might be over in the first 10 seconds.
Yeah.
Askren ends up surviving this onslaught. They continue to scrap. Askren clearly looking for the tie-up, the grapple the whole time. And then it ends with this weird scramble where Askren ends up in a bulldog choke, or a bully choke, they call it sometimes.
Can we back up just a little bit?
Sure.
As far as Askren has Lawler in, like, he takes his back and is starting to work for that rear naked choke. It's not happening. Position's a little funky. He's got him kind of in a seated position.
Appropriate.
Yeah.
Is that an intentional pun? That's Askren's nickname, Funky.
Oh.
Way to go.
Thank you. Do what I can.
All right. Yeah.
So he gets him in that seated position, and, the choke is not there.
Right.
For one reason or another.
Well, he's choking across the face. Lawler's been in this a long time. If you know what you're doing, you can, turtle up, and you know when it's in, you know when it's not. Long story short, the scramble continues. Askren doesn't really let go of the grip, and he ends up in this bulldog choke position, which is a really uncomfortable position to be in if you're not used to it. And if it's deep, is really uncomfortable. If you get under the chin, and it looks deep. It looks bad.
For those of you who are unfamiliar with, like, a bulldog choke or bully choke, it's kind of, if you had siblings, it's very reminiscent of basically a front headlock where you're both facing the same way.
Well, not a front. The opposite. What we would call a headlock, like, not if you wrestle and grapple, a headlock starts to mean something different. It means a head and arm control from the front. But if you don't know, so when somebody says headlock, if you picture just, a big brother giving noogies or an uncle or something like that, when you have someone's head wrapped up and they're behind you and you're in front and you're just holding them like a circus strongman, like a pro wrestler.
Right.
Which is a very unusual position to be in for pro fighters.
Yes.
Because it's not a sustainable position to hold. If you know what you're doing, it's so fucking easy to get out of that and to turn that into a bad position, unless you're Ben Askren and you're a very good wrestler, and you basically what you do to make it damaging is you get under the throat or under the head, and your weight is driving forward so much that you're kind of creating that the vertex of the pressure is right on the guy's neck. So it makes it really hard for him to get under your hips, underneath you, scoop you, and roll you so he ends up on top, which I know for a podcast that sounds very esoteric. But you just have to understand it's unusual to be in this position in the first place.
Much less not countering and seeing where that is.
Right, and
but
getting
also
tapped from it, which is what happens is it looks like Lawler goes to sleep. Herb Dean calls the contest, and as soon as he calls it and Askren lets go, it's very apparent that Lawler's fine.
Right.
That he was not out at all. Which is, I think it was an understandable call. When you watch it, Lawler looks limp. When he goes to check for the arm, the arm flops. And I don't know if Lawler was just not wasting energy or trying to play possum. So Askren burned out.
I mean, it's hard
That's
to say.
what he said. Lawler said that he felt like he was squeezing so fucking hard, he was just going to let him burn out on that. And then he was fine.
Sure. Okay. But watching it in real time, to me, it looks like, he's out.
Yeah.
Obviously, as we Monday morning quarterback all of it, and we're just like, okay, obviously he was fine. He was given the thumbs up and all that stuff. But if you're watching a bulldog choke happening in the octagon a foot away from you and you see somebody go limp, you're like, well, fuck it, it's over.
Yeah, if you're Herb Dean, I think it's a good call. One thing I argue about all the time for people who don't know about MMA is that it's much safer than any other combat sport, arguably any other full contact sport, because while the attempt is all about injuring the opponent versus, football or something where ostensibly it's not, it's about scoring points or something like that.
Sure.
The nature of it is that you don't take repeated impacts. If you go out a little bit, then they make you go out. It's not like boxing where you have big pillows on your hands that allow you to take more trauma. The little gloves mean that knockouts come quicker, and if they come quicker, it's over faster, we're done. If you look flash knocked out even a little bit, they usually call it, so you can't take repeated trauma on top of the trauma.
Yeah, unlike boxing where you get a standing 8 count if you're not out completely.
Right.
And you get a chance to
Get
do
back
it all
up.
over again.
Yeah, get some more concussions.
Exactly.
And then you have submissions, which is if you tap out, then you're fine. And if somebody is out in a choke, it's only bad if you keep holding on.
Mm-hmm.
If you let them let go or force them to let go, and the guy, he just wake up. It's like you took a little nap. It's not a big deal. So if a ref sees somebody out like that, that's a good call. They intervene, fucking drop it, and he looks out.
He looks out to me. And again, you could also make a case that in the beginning of that fight, up until Ben Askren changes position, you could have made a case that Herb Dean should have called that fight.
You think so?
I think so. Because
for some of those strikes?
For some of those strikes, they were landing pretty flush.
They were, but I think Askren was clearly he was awake. He was still in it.
Sure.
For sure. I know what you're saying.
Yeah. You can make a case for it. I still think he made the right call across that entire fight. Herb Dean did. But I would still love to see these guys fight again selfishly just because I love both of these guys and I would love to see what happens again.
Yeah, I think so. I think it goes the same way, though. I think Askren still wins in a more dominant fashion where he doesn't have as many nerves about finally being here in the UFC to be... Because I don't think he has nerves in the sense that he's fought a lot before.
Oh, he's fought on big cards all the time.
But I think he knows that, this is a big deal. A lot of people are watching this one, and there's inevitably going to be some extra.
Sure.
It should be noted, too, that much like the Khabib choke, when he choked out Conor McGregor and people saw it and it wasn't that deep, it was across more the teeth and the jaw than underneath the chin.
Yeah.
That choke still sucks. A, you can turn off your blood still from there.
Yep.
B, it'll break your jaw.
Yeah.
And if you don't think that, there's some great videos you can look up of Askren crushing watermelons. He bear hugs 2 watermelons and then
across
Gable
his
grips.
chest, and then Gable grips them and literally breaks 2 watermelons.
Yeah, just crushes them.
And I think that should be noted too about just sure, it's a bulldog choke, but then it's also Ben Askren. Who arguably, as he claims in the video, has the tightest grip in the world or whatever.
Yeah. He definitely has that Midwest farmer wrestlery strength that's just looks very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It was fun. It was wild little scrambly fight. Kind of a dope one. But that was UFC 235, or the parts that are important to me.
Yeah.
Oh, let's ask just the end. Usman. I think it is cool that Usman, first African-born champ at welterweight. So
yeah, absolutely. That Tyron Woodley fight was okay. Yeah. I mean, I was really happy for him. I love Tyron.
Yeah.
But I was very happy to see that
Tyron's not his heart's not in fighting that much anymore.
Well, it's because he dropped an album the day of the fight.
Yeah, and I think
that's the first sign that you're
which I fully support.
Yeah, no, I support it too. But that just tells you that his heart is not 100% committed to fighting. And if you're fighting at the highest level, I don't know if that's really what you should be doing.
I agree.
Yeah. I hope his album sells a million copies.
Dude, I do too. I've heard some of it, and I think he's good.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Nice.
I'm a Woodley hip-hop fan. I mean,
does he go under his own name, or does he have a different name that he's doing?
I actually don't know, because I've only seen it in his social posts or shares or something like that. I haven't gone and listened to his stuff, but I was like, yeah, this is pretty cool.
Cool.
I don't know.
Nice. UFC 235.
Yep.
This week in sports.
I feel sick as fuck, dude.
Well, we just have the second half of this podcast left, and since we're only doing one, we'll knock it out and you can go home.
Let's do it. you are doing it again this week.
I am. I am doing it this week.
Yeah.
And I originally wanted to. I was going to bring in a fight, like a legendary fight.
Yeah.
And then as I was doing some research on that fight, I saw today's headline: Mirko Cro Cop, lucky after stroke, retires from MMA.
Yeah.
And that inspired me to talk about Mirko Filipovic, a.k.a. Mirko Cro Cop, as one of the legends of the sport.
Undeniably.
At one point, he was considered one of the most fearsome strikers in the sport.
Yeah.
And he announced on Croatian television today that he was retiring from MMA, and he considers himself very lucky, but he ultimately says, I must not take punches to the head ever again.
Right.
And this was following a stroke that he suffered after a win over Roy Nelson at last month's Bellator 216. And he was advised by doctors at the time to never fight again. And what's interesting is he goes on to talk about how he's like, yep, super lucky, and talks about
How old is he?
He is 44 years old.
Only 44.
Yeah.
Wow, I would have guessed a little older, honestly.
To me, I would have guessed a little bit older too. But he started fighting in 2001.
Oh, yeah.
And he's, of course, best known for his work in Pride. That's
Right.
where he came on my radar. Pride FC, Pride. He had also done some work with K1. He didn't get to the UFC until he was already kind of on the tail end of his career. After that, he did a small bout in Ryzen and then, of course, Bellator. But he is definitely not a slouch when it comes to the fight game.
No.
He retires officially with a record of 38-11 with 2 draws, 1 no contest. And that's as far as mixed martial arts. Now, keep in mind, that is a lot of fights for a mixed martial artist.
38-11.
Yeah.
Gosh golly, dude.
Best known for his run in Pride, of course, where he battled the likes of Fedor, Josh Barnett, Big Nog, and some others. In my research, I looked at some highlights, and I really want to get your reaction to some of these highlights because it is some scary stuff, especially after talking about CTE in our previous episodes. So he found himself doing kickboxing before, and before that, he had an amateur boxing career of many, many amateur fights. He started his professional career in 1996 as a kickboxer. He started his amateur boxing record at 48-8 with 31 KOs.
As an amateur.
As an amateur. Most guys we know who
31 KOs.
Yeah.
Dude, what the fuck? Was he trying to be an Olympic boxer?
He was, but he was also splitting his time between his law enforcement career and his boxing
Which
career.
is why he's named Cro Cop. Wow.
Croatian cop.
Oh, right. Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess that was a no-brainer. But
yeah.
What is the deal with that? Like, how did he was a cop?
Yes, he literally was a Croatian police officer. I shouldn't say police officer. He was actually in the anti-terror division, which makes him that much scarier.
Yeah, that makes
especially
sense.
given the history of Croatia and former Yugoslavia. So the guy is tough as nails.
Scary.
Yeah, no, he's definitely a scary dude. And like, you know, he also served time in Parliament. We'll eventually get there, but we'll kind of start with his career. So he enjoyed a decorated, you know, amateur boxing career. And even before he started getting into cage fighting. So, like, he got into K1. In 2001, he actually signed with Pride, but he was sort of on this thing where you could float between K1 and Pride. They were kind of in bed together. He eventually left K1 just because they weren't paying him nearly enough money considering what he was doing to his body. So early on in his life, I want to talk a little bit about his inspiration for fighting. Because, like, for the most part, we all know him from Pride and from the UFC, but you know, I always wonder what kind of motivates somebody to get into this line of work, especially back in like the mid 90s and early 2000s when there's not a lot of fame. There's definitely not a lot of money. And like what sort of gets into your head that you're like, okay, like this is going to be a thing. And so he grew up training of all things track and field. Short distance events. So he was a sprinter, the 100, 200, 400 dashes were kind of his jam. So
yeah, which is that's the best. That makes a lot of sense. Those are very anaerobic, explosive sports that would translate really well to the kind of cardio and power creation that you'd need to do well in fight sports.
Well, it's a good thing that he saw JCVD's Bloodsport because he began training in his parents' garage with his father's boxing equipment and weights. But it was based off of that movie,
of course,
that led him to get into kickboxing.
How many people? How many people? That's so funny.
He's so responsible for so many people's careers,
dude. That's I wanted to be a time cop because of Jean-Claude Van Damme. You know?
Yeah. I wanted to time travel. I
wanted to be a time traveling cop or time cop, but I went another way. So here I am.
Good for all of us, I guess.
Still can't do a splits up onto a counter, unfortunately, but one day.
Over time.
Still working on it.
Yeah. So he eventually started creating crude sort of equipment to train with.
Creating his own equipment?
He created his own equipment.
That's the most CroCop-y sounding shit ever.
Yeah. No, his dad was an electrician for the railroad, so he was just like, hey, give me some of those railroad ties. I'll come up with something.
Jeez.
Yeah. So, I mean, he was definitely way into it, and I guess he began formal training, as they say, in Taekwondo at the age of 7, and also studied karate.
TKD and karate.
Yeah. So, I mean, that kind of like already sets you up for those crazy kicks that he was like most famous for.
He was. Those big, scary head kicks.
Yeah. After his father died in 94, he joined the Croatian army as a radio telegraphist.
Huh.
Yeah. He had written his commander at the time and was just like, hey, I want to join the Croatian national kickboxing team. And his request was approved. And so there was a quote from his colonel at the time that I think is really important. I don't think you want to be a special soldier, but I believe you to be a good fighter one day. So you don't have to learn with the radio telegraphist. I release you, and I want you to train twice a day. And I want you to make your country and your homeland proud one day. CroCop describes this as one of the best days of his life, that he actually began his journey as a pro kickboxer.
That's really interesting because that reminds me of the stuff about pancration in the ancient world and like the way people thought of athletes versus soldiers, like that general. So it's funny. This guy is like, I don't think you're going to be a good soldier.
No.
But maybe you could be a good kickboxer. So let's stop with this radio telegraph thing. That's so interesting. I mean, that's nice. That's cool.
I mean, it's just funny how that theme that we talked about a couple episodes ago literally happened to Mirko Cro Cop.
Because if it was me, it would be it's such a like Seinfeldy backhanded compliment. I'd be like, wait, you don't think I'd be a good soldier? No, I think I'll just be a soldier. It'll be good. I'm just gonna be a telegraphist. No, they're like, no, you're being an amazing kickboxer. I know, but I just think I should do this thing that I started first. You know,
why don't you go train twice a day?
And they would just fuck with you forever. You'd be like, I guess I'm not a good soldier. And that's all you do is focus on the thing you're not good at.
Yeah.
Well, Cro Cop, good thing he doesn't have fucking neuroses.
Yeah, no, exactly. Or if he does, he masks them very well.
He just beats them up.
Yeah. He began fighting exclusively with Pride and came to national prominence when he beat Heath Herring, who at the time, Heath Herring was like a big draw. He was 20-8. He's this big American dude, and he was one of the champions. Cro Cop eventually defeated Herring by body kick. About 3 minutes.
Body kick.
Yeah.
Well, Cro Cop really embodied, for me at least, like the people I always found scariest were, well, first kids from downstate Illinois who were like farm kids, you know? And then just, I don't know, Eastern European dudes. Something about this.
Their stoicism as they walk into the ring and they're just kind of, it's another day at the office.
You know what it is the lack of humor really throws me. Anybody I know or has a sense of humor, I'm like, they're human. When somebody has no sense of humor, I don't know. It seems like they have genetics that come from a part of the Ice Age that survived that just, there's like two coping mechanisms. One is to like figure out how things are funny.
Yeah.
Make light of life. Enjoy yourself. You know, find the humor in things.
Right.
The other side is just take it. Just this stoic, what's funny about that? You wouldn't even ask that question. And Cro Cop embodied that so hard.
Him
to
and
me.
Fedor are two great examples of that, where it's like, I don't think I've ever seen him crack a smile, much less a joke.
Yeah, just the dead-eye coldness that seems completely supported by their fighting style. No nonsense, vicious, very direct, and just so powerful. I don't know, Cro Cop always was that to me, that left kick just cracking people in the temple over and over again. Ugh.
Yeah, time in and time again. That's really what sort of, you know, that's what he was known for.
Was he southpaw?
He was southpaw.
He was. So his kick that I thought was a lead leg left is actually his power kick.
Yeah, and so when he was throwing those body shots, the like that left, what would look like a left hook to conventional was actually like, when he was hitting catching people with the liver shot.
His big power.
Yeah, big power coming out of there. But of course, as you described his high kick, he once famously described it as right leg hospital, left leg cemetery.
Jeez Louise.
And I remember hearing that and laughing, and then I saw highlight reels and went, oh, no, that's pretty accurate.
Very accurate.
Yeah.
Being strong on that side, too, does give you an advantage, like dropping Herring in that first fight with a liver shot.
Yeah.
Because that's the side of your body your liver's on.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it definitely gives you an advantage. And we'll talk a little bit about his career in the UFC, which was not nearly as decorated as many had hoped, because he was so dominant and had so many highlight reel knockouts in Pride. By the time he got to the UFC, I was so excited to see like such a dynamic striker come in, especially at the time where sprawl and brawl was like the best style, and he was a perfect example of that. Him and Chuck Liddell, all those guys who were just like, yeah, I know how to wrestle, but let's keep it on our feet. And it was just so exciting.
Well, that was that time. Yeah, sprawl and brawl was a great, because there was this. I've noticed, I think UFC, MMA in general, sort of goes in waves and cycles of types of fighting that become popular. Mm-hmm. And I think you had this thing where the Gracies came in and had made grappling this big thing. And then you had wrestlers following up on that, because when you can add strikes in, a good wrestler who can strike, who knows how to survive basic submissions, becomes very dominant in fighting. And I think you see, so everybody starts training for that, how to stop that takedown. So you get these strikers then who are, if you're a really good striker, you learn enough wrestling to keep it on the feet so you never have to deal with the ground stuff. And then the guy who's stuck standing is just out of his element and you get to do what you want to him. You see this thing happen. So then everybody starts adjusting for that. We start getting better at striking. And so people suddenly are like, well, I want to go back to the ground again.
All fights start on the feet.
Yeah.
Like you start hearing adages like that.
But I'm talking about that wave of like a style becomes popular because it's dominating everybody. So everybody in their training adjusts to that style. And then it becomes this rock, paper, scissors thing forever where now striking is more dominant. You're seeing that take over. So then people get good enough at striking to survive that onslaught and go back to grappling, which is people's weaknesses. So then people start focusing on grappling again. And you get this like constant back and forth. And CroCop was right in the middle of that time, I think, when sprawl and brawl was a big deal. The fact that he could choke out Randleman, though, who was a great wrestler, one of the best wrestlers at the time, too.
In research of this, I completely forgot that he choked out Randleman, but I also forgot that he got knocked out by Randleman in their first fight. And you're like,
right.
CroCop got knocked out by Randleman?
You're like, isn't it supposed to go the other way around?
Yeah, in both instances.
Which is that's just the great thing about fighting.
That's why I love this silly sport.
Yeah, a puncher's chance, as they say.
Yeah.
That you really have it. You never know on the given day who's going to slip, who's got the sun in their eyes. There's this amazing thing about anything can happen, which again is why you should just always avoid violence.
Right, absolutely. outside of sport fighting, please always avoid violence. With that said, I want to talk about the UFC title eliminator fight from April 14th, 2017. Let me take that all back. I want to talk about the UFC title fight from April of 2007, where CroCop faced Gabriel Gonzaga. Now, I remember this fight for a variety of reasons, besides the eventual highlight reel knockout that went the other way when people were expecting.
Yeah.
I believe I was actually at a Hooters in Santa Monica.
Amazing.
with my wife and a couple friends, my now wife and a couple friends, and it was being fed to us that Gabriel Gonzaga, this I think was fought officially at heavyweight. Gabriel Gonzaga was being fed to Mirko Cro Cop as a can, as like, okay, here's this big Brazilian guy who doesn't know too much. He's probably got some jiu-jitsu because he's Brazilian, and styles make fights. We're going to set him up with one of the baddest men on the planet who can throw kicks like nobody's business with CroCop. And what ended up happening is in the first round, it was a rather significant beatdown by Gabriel Gonzaga, who manhandled CroCop in a way that myself included couldn't really quantify, because there wasn't a lot of blood. There were no unstable legs, anything like that from any of the shots that Gabriel Gonzaga threw. I will now read a direct quote from Mirko Cro Cop about the fight. He hit me at least 10 or 15 times. Clean shots to the head. It was a miracle that I didn't start bleeding. Maybe it would have been better for me if he had cut me, as the referee would stop the fight. But when I stood up, I saw 3 opponents. I was already finished. I took too many shots to the head. I was totally out of control. He threw a high kick, it landed on my head, and that was it. But I'm a fighter, and there's no shame in falling down. Only not to rise again. But that's my life.
Damn.
So, for those of you who haven't seen the fight, while he's getting ground and pounded on the ground and just eating elbow after elbow from Gabriel Gonzaga, eventually the fight gets stood back up. And in the closing seconds of the fight, Gonzaga throws a head kick out of nowhere. Basically, the signature kick of Mirko Cro Cop.
Yeah.
It hits instantly, and I thought, when I saw it live, I thought someone had died in the octagon because he is out so fast and lands so horribly on his knee, you would think that someone had died. It was one of the scariest / most exciting things I think I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
And I mean, I can still see it now.
I mean, that's rather poignant about where he's at now. Mm-hmm. Because his whole thing about, as soon as he found out about this stroke and the situation, he's just like, I can never take a shot to the head again. I'm done. Just so everyone knows, I'm done.
Yeah. And also, to be fair, I think the reason why he's putting such an exclamation point on that is because he's retired a handful of times only to come back in different organizations.
Yeah, which is, again, just the worst.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, Randy Couture was fighting at 45 and looked really good back when he was doing it, like when he's 45 years old.
Yeah.
But that's a lot of decades of your life to keep getting hit in the head.
Yeah, so not everybody is Randy Couture and can go into their mid to late 40s. I mean, Randy, fought until he was 48 or 49? Something insane, which I just wouldn't recommend to anybody. But again, he found a way to do it. So he announced his official retirement today, and he went on to say on TV, on Croatian TV, I had bleeding in the brain. I came out of the hospital today, and that's why I wanted to come here to see people feeling good. I had an unbelievable luck in this accident. And again, he said the stroke did not come as a result of his recent fight against Nelson, but rather a neck issue that had been bothering him for several months. He said the stroke will not be life-threatening as long as he never fights again. I will never enter the ring again, he said. I cannot let someone hit me.
Well, I'm glad that he's calling it.
Me too, man. I mean, he's
just an example to people out there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
How long can somebody fight before you're like, hey, this isn't good that you're doing this anymore. This is starting to feel bad.
Did you feel that way about Tito and Chuck in their last fight?
Yes, very much so.
Yeah, I didn't want to see that fight.
Didn't want to see that. Same as there's like Laban and Phil Baroni fought in bare knuckle boxing. Did you see that fight?
No, and I don't.
And it's horrible, man. Baroni goes out so early from not even huge heavy shots. Granted, they're bare knuckle shots, but you're like, that's so fucked up. That's so unfortunate that this is the only thing that you can do at this point. And because there's not, I mean, we're talking about CroCop had 48 amateur fights, knocked out 31 guys in those fights. Those guys got knocked out for nothing. For their literal pride, not the Pride organization, but for pride and a thing that they love to do. And that I understand also. I mean,
I understand a part of that.
I do jiu-jitsu and I accept that I'm going to get little injuries here and there in my joints for something that I love. So I understand that, giving your life to something that you love to some degree. But that thing, I don't know. There's this curve. Because the other side of it, I was watching Last Samurai one time a little while ago, and as I was watching it, I was doing the dishes and just had it on, and I was just thinking about this idea of the samurai, this archetypal idea of somebody who gives their life to hone their instrument to be perfect at this thing, at fighting, and how much more time you spend honing your physical, fragile body to be tougher and perfect and just artistically able to do violence as perfectly as possible and getting your weapons and your armor all perfect. Also that you can just all go into a field one day and cut each other up. To just ruin all of it.
Yeah.
And the insanity, like the idiocy of the idea of honor of that there's not a better way to figure this out. Like what we have to do is go cut each other up with knives, and that's the best way. I was a butcher for a while, so really I think I was in that headspace watching the movie too, of just being up close to little tiny pieces of sharp metal, taking apart 800-pound animals with no problem, and just being like, this is the thing people go do. And there's something almost religious about it, about this sacrifice where you are taking people who are making their bodies as perfect as possible, as fit and strong and flexible and powerful, and working their mind games, their ability to do the fight math of strategy and angle and all that stuff. You're really honing your instrument as best as it can, just so you can go in there and try to break it. And I'm like, I'm just caught in this thought about it, thinking about Cro Cop and watching some of those fights that are horrible knockouts, that I, as an artist, as somebody who loves art, I think we should be spending insane amounts of resources on arguably absurd things. When I have art friends who don't understand the Super Bowl or whatever, stuff like that, I'm always like, you understand concerts though, right? You understand like Lady Gaga, like the amount of energy and resource that needs to happen for all the electricity to work and the stadium to exist and those people to get fed and drink and have places to pee and poo while they're there. Like,
much less all the time, all the reps she had to log to be as perfect as a performance artist as she is.
Yes.
The same thing happens with some of these fighters.
Yes. Well, I just think the arguable, when we think about like what we're doing as people, as civilization, and you're like, there are homeless people and hungry people and tired people and sick people, and we are dumping resources into these arguably absurd things. It's the same thing that I said a couple weeks ago, why I love Huge, like they moved that big dumb rock to LACMA, that there is something symbolic in the sacrifice of time and energy and devotion of resources to just do this thing that inspires people.
Right.
That makes people feel whatever they feel. The feeling that, like Randleman and Cro Cop, anything can happen in a fight. You have a fighting chance against anything in your life. You never know what's going to happen. Also, if bad things happen to you, maybe it's just because it's a random bad day. You don't know.
You had a bad day.
I mean, there's something to that, right? About what attracts us to this absurd fucking thing where people just take something they've invested in to go ruin it.
Yeah. No, I mean, a big part of it, too, is like you look at it and it's like, well, what are you going to do when you talk about Chris Lieb and when you talk about Phil Baroni? Like, what else are those guys going to do, man? Like,
yeah, I know.
You know, and that makes
What
me
drives
appreciate Tyron Woodley dropping an album and talking about acting and like Rhonda getting into WWE. And it's like, yeah, you know what? Apparently I should have learned head movement. All right, cool. Like,
yeah,
you know, it's like you got to find something else to do with your life, because for me, if I don't know, I diversify so much of my life to the best of my ability, where it's like if something that's important to me goes away, I still have 2 or 3 other things that are really important to me that allow me to either not identify myself with solely one thing, you know?
Yeah.
Where if I was a fighter and I couldn't and I had to stop fighting, what do you do with your time? That's your identity.
Yeah. I had a weird experience once with my dad, who's got a history of some mental illness and some substance stuff, but he ended up getting disbarred because of some things. He was a lawyer. And I remember sitting in the car with him one day, and it was in the darkest like days of my family and his thing. And I remember him saying, you know, most people, when you ask them who they are, he said, most people, when you ask them who they are, they say their job. I was a lawyer for 15 years, and now I'm not. And there was just this weird silence that I could never not think about. I still think about it today. And there is something to that idea of figuring out who you are and defining who you are. Like you said, diversifying what you do, hopefully finding something that defines you that isn't your struggle and isn't one thing that destroys you. But for those of you or us, whatever, that end up in that position where you've given so much of yourself to this thing for so long, you've identified so much as this one thing, it can be really hard to give that up. Oh, yeah.
I mean, you see it happen all the time in football or pro sports. It's just like, and it's even worse with the college kids who never make they give their entire life. If you've ever seen like there's a documentary that I can't remember that we'll have to research into the podcast where they, I want to say it's an HBO documentary where they talk about kids who play in the NCAA as football players and either get injured or don't get a shot to make it to the NFL. And they've given their entire life to the sport since they were 4 years old. And technically they have a degree, but they have no skills. No skills. And it's like, what do you do? And they've identified themselves as like, I'm a football player. And I can't play football anymore.
It's crazy.
What do you do? You know, and so
you really have to look at how you identify yourself. I guess it's just maybe a warning or a moral to the story for everybody else to not define yourself by some outside singular factor that can go away.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean, all of this is fleeting. You know, the fact that like I still get to train jiu-jitsu at 40. I still get to do like coach CrossFit and like do all the stuff. Well, at the same time, you know, we're still out there producing art and making art. All of that is not lost on me because I know that it can go away at any time. Yeah. Show business is vaporware, right? Physical fitness, like all this stuff could go away at any time.
It's a sandcastle.
It really is. It's almost like a house of cards that you're like, listen, man, I know this is going to collapse at some point, but let's ride this motherfucker. Let's see where it goes.
Let's do our best, which I think maybe gets in. That is the part of the samurai thing, of the Zen mindsets of it, because there's a lot of Zen kind of Buddhist philosophy that gets tied in with Bushido. Is the or it's more Taoist, I guess. Chop wood, carry water. That whole idea of in just the doing of a thing that is finite, that you know is going to go away. The stewardship there, the sort of impossible struggle to cultivate and to care for something that will always lose to entropy. That's just what being a person is.
I think that's what being a person is. Those are relationships. That's life. That's the human experience. And I think CroCop's retirement may have brought that out in us.
I feel like it's a nice button.
That's a nice button, you know?
I'll stop there. I don't know.
Yeah. No, we can go on forever.
CroCop, God bless you. I hope you're okay. And don't take a shot in the head again, dude.
Yeah, please enjoy politics. P.S. I just want to add there, I couldn't find a single article about where he stands politically.
Yeah, I'm curious. I don't want to know, to be honest, because I have a feeling if you're a cop in Eastern Europe, I'm probably not going to agree with your politics very much.
Yeah, they had a much different experience. Anyways, this has been another edition of the Fight Stuff podcast. As always, I'm Zeke Rodrigues Thomas.
I'm Jared Sleeper.
You can find us on the internet. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Smash that like button.
You can, if you're listening to us, wherever you're listening to us, if it's probably Apple Podcasts is where most people seem to listen, but we're also on Spotify if you have Android friends or if you're an Android friend. Also, they should be posting to YouTube now too. The old YouTube channel that used to be Murderbot, now it's just Jay Sleeper. It's just whatever. It's this YouTube depository of a lot of random fucking things.
Yeah.
Including my other podcast about mental health and being a person, which is very different from this. Maybe not a little similar from that last segment. But yeah, what else? That's it. Fight Stuff Podcast on Instagram. If you have a viral fight clip or subject you think would be interesting for us to talk about, send it to us at fightstuffpodcast@gmail.com.
Cool. What's your socials?
Oh, it's Jared_Sleeper on Instagram or just Jared Sleeper on Twitter.
And I'm Zeke Thomas is Rad on Instagram. And
you know what? Last thought I will just throw out there in our little wrappy-dappy thing.
Yeah.
I think we're going to be starting a Patreon, and we have some ideas for extra kind of content that we would offer as rewards. If there's anything that seems like it'd be interesting to you, send it our way.
Yeah. Let us know because we were thinking that we're trying to keep each one of these episodes down to an hour. And obviously sometimes we want to do deep dives into either one of our sort of segments that go much longer than that. Because a half hour, 20 minutes is not nearly enough to really cover somebody's life or go into great detail about, an element of fighting history or the history of violence. And maybe that would be a great,
extra thing, little extra things of more deep. Yeah, that's interesting. Whatever.
We were also thinking about title belts and and four-finger rings.
Definitely dumb merchandise is up there. I think I want to do some fight technique videos.
Absolutely.
Probably inspired by some of our viral clips and just things like that, or workout-y kind of things. Stuff that we do in our fight training or just being a person training for sort of the the weekend warriors out there, the people who just who aren't trying to set the world on fire, but would like to know some stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's it, dude. I think that's it. We're good. We're good. Anything else?
Nope, I'm good.
All right. That's a wrap. See you next week, Fight fans.
Later, guys.
Fight Stuff is a production of Mind Jam Media. Special thanks to Jason Scardamalia for making our theme song. See you next time, Fight fans. Side note, I looked it up, and if you want to see that documentary series that Zeke was talking about, the one about NCAA athletes getting taken advantage of, it's called Student Athlete, and it is on HBO. Also, I did find out about CroCop's political career, in case anyone was interested about that, and I was very wrong and assumptive. Turns out, CroCop was elected to the Croatian parliament, where he served one term from the 23rd of December 2003 to the 11th of January 2008. He was elected as an independent, however associated with the Social Democratic Party of Croatia, which is the center-left party of the Croatian political scene. So, joke's on me. Don't make assumptions about cops from Eastern European countries.